Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Namo Aniruddhaya Hishikesha Indriyatmane Nama Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nivritatmane Swarga Pavargadvaraya Nityam Suchisade Nama Nama Purna Swarga Pavargadvaraya Nityam Suchisade Nama Nama Hiranyavirya Chaturhotraya Tantave Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we are continuing with the discussion of Sri Siksastakam. The previous session we spoke on verse 5, and verse 5 is an extraordinarily critical verse because in verse 5, Lord Chaitanya shifts and reveals information about the inner sentiments and behavior of someone who has received Swarup Gyan. In the first verse, we speak of Cheto Darpanamarjanam, where the soul is working very hard for clearing up the smoke and the other obfuscation of being able to see his or her eternal Swarup. For his or her eternal Swarup in relationship to Krishna. For the soul to be able to learn of who he or she is in the eternal entourage of Krishna. And then as this progresses on and we reach verse 5, in verse 5, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the previous week we read about it, in verse 5 he sings as follows. He says, Ai Nanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitamma Vishame Bhavam Budau Kripaya Tavapada Pankaja Stitaduli Sadrisham Vichintaya. So Mahaprabhu is practically in this verse, in verse 5, as we spoke about last week, he is revealing his mood as a kinkara. In other words, as a servant of Krishna. So this verse actually talks about the jiva, because Mahaprabhu has come here to enact the role of a devotee. And since he has come here to enact the role of a devotee, he starts talking about different stages. And in verse 5, he practically talks about the fact that a jiva, he represents a jiva who has attained Swarup Siddhi. He represents a jiva who has attained knowledge of his eternal position in the spiritual sky, knowledge of his relationship with Krishna, knowledge of the service that the person has to do. So he represents that in just one word. He says that I am your servant, right? Nanda Tanuja Kinkaram. He's saying, I am your servant. Okay, now he is acknowledging that I am your servant. But at the same time, Mahaprabhu is also giving us a view of the consciousness of a person who has now attained complete knowledge of his eternal position. He is giving us a view and he is saying that I am your servant. And after which he goes on to say that, please give me a position, just keep me at your lotus feet. Do not throw me away. Just please keep me at your lotus feet. Now there is fear. This is someone who has attained a great gift, someone who has crossed over this ocean and who has attained the cherished dream of several lifetimes, practically the whole of existence. And after attaining the cherished dream, now the person is becoming quite fearful, and he's making a statement saying, please keep me as an atom at your lotus feet. Do not throw me away into this ocean of birth and death. Now there's fear of losing that position of proximity to Krishna because they are so overwhelmed with the experience of coming so close to Krishna. So that was the previous week where the Swarup Gyan has come. So now in this particular week, we're going to talk about Mahaprabhu's verse reflects Bhava. In the previous week as well, it was reflecting Ashakti. The previous week, prior to that, we were going through the different stages of Sadhu Sangha and Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, Nishtha, Ruchi, and Ashakti. And in the previous week, he attains the entire Swarup. He is now completely convinced and he's fully aware that he is a servant, and he's fully aware of his position in the spiritual sky, and he's becoming quite anxious of not wanting to lose that extraordinary opportunity which has been given to him. And this week, it's continuing again in the mood of a Bhava Bhakta. Okay. Now, these are external sentiments. You have to realize that Mahaprabhu, when he is talking about this, he is practically sharing the external manifestation of symptoms of one who has attained the highest position one can hope to attain in sadhana bhakti. Right? He is basically saying, I in this verse, Nayanam Galadashrudaraya Vadanam Gadgadaruddaya Gira Pulakir Nichitam Vapukkada Tavanamagrahane Bhavishanti. So the translation is, my dear Lord, when will my eyes be beautified by filling with tears that constantly glide down as I chant your holy name? When will my voice falter and all the hairs on my body stand erect in transcendental happiness as I chant your holy name? Okay, this is a very extraordinary statement. In one sense, if you actually look at it, it seems to be something which we are not able to fully relate to. Why? Because, the experience of the highest level of spiritual ecstasy is resulting in being able to chant Krishna's names and being able to cry with spiritual ecstasy, being able to have a position of being excited and enthused by chanting his holy names, that there are bodily transformations that are occurring. Now, this is something which is not very easy to comprehend because these are external symptoms. We all cry and have cried at some point or the other, not because of chanting Krishna's names, but because of some form of suffering, because of some sentiment, because of some emotion. Then relating that activity, which our own experience talks about, which is quite mundane, to something which is extraordinary, is very difficult. It's very difficult to form a bridge and become enthused about such a state. But this is Krishna. One has to realize that. This is Krishna. Mahaprabhu is Krishna. And he doesn't speak sentiment. He is practically someone who has the complete ability to experience whatever he is talking about. So there's absolutely no, a false sentiment, or there is nothing which is to be speculated upon the intention of Mahaprabhu. He is literally experiencing what he has written. It is something which we cannot comprehend because our own experiences of bliss or so-called happiness or sorrow and so on and so forth sometimes have been interspersed with tears, have been interspersed with different bodily transformations. It is very difficult for us to put a bridge between that and what Mahaprabhu is experiencing. Okay, but one can comprehend one thing, that this particular truth of just being able to call the name Krishna or Rama and immediately being able to shed tears of ecstasy. In fact, the shedding of tears of ecstasy at a very advanced stage in Bhava Bhaktas or in a very advanced stage, it need not involve the complete understanding of Krishna consciousness. It can happen in just a relation to Krishna consciousness. For instance, someone might see a peacock feather and tears might come out of their eyes. Or they might become completely enamored by just seeing a peacock feather because now they remember Krishna. They may see a cow. Just seeing a cow is enough for them to go into raptures. They completely go into the spiritual sky and experience, high levels of ecstasy. So it need not be the chanting of the holy name. It can be any object which is related to Vraja. Any object that is related to Vraja would automatically enthuse people who are advanced into go into spiritual ecstasy. What to say of actually calling upon Krishna's names? Because Krishna at this stage is completely accessible. It's very difficult for us to relate to it. But he is completely accessible. He is accessible because this person who is a Bhava Bhakta is able to call upon Krishna and immediately perceive the presence of Krishna. He is able to relate to Krishna. He is able to serve him. He is able to enter into his service as he advances, and the love which he has condenses even more and moves from Bhava, slowly submitting itself to Prema. There are different symptoms that are being given which the person experiences, and in those symptoms he practically experiences Krishna. So when someone is able to practically experience Krishna by uttering Krishna's name, Krishna manifests. What does this mean? It means there is really no Mahat Tattva. There is no barrier between the person's existence on the planet and the spiritual sky. There really isn't no barrier. He or she is able to transport themselves to the spiritual sky. There is no barrier. There are no so many layers of material energy covering them. There are no more layers beyond which are preventing them from accessing Krishna's presence. They're able to access Krishna's presence instantaneously by simply calling upon the Lord's names. And the moment they utter the two syllables, Krishna, they become ecstatic because now they are in the spiritual sky and they are experiencing direct phenomena. Okay? Now they are experiencing direct phenomena. And Mahaprabhu is actually describing it. He is saying, right? Nayanam galada shrudaraya, vadanam gadgada ruddaya gira, pulake nichitam, vapu kadan, right? Tavanamagrahane bhavishyati. So this is something which he's talking about, which is absolutely normal if one is being transported immediately on the uttering of Krishna's names to the spiritual sky. It's not inconceivable. You see, it is inconceivable for us. It is inconceivable for us. It is even more inconceivable to the voidists, the Shunyavadis. It is completely inconceivable to the impersonalists, right? So Srila Prabhupada, when he came here, what was the pranam which Srila Prabhupada used? Right? Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi, right? Paschatya Desa Tarine. Paschatya Desa is Western countries. And then he said Nirvisesha and Shunyavadi. Now imagine our highest expression and experience with Krishna at Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti literally involves our being able to deal with him, or rather have dealings, personal dealings with the Lord himself in the spiritual sky. Now the Shunyavadi, he practically is making this entire experience in this world a shunya, and that is his ultimate goal. He says that all the experience in this world are mundane and they're all shunya. His ultimate goal is to reach a point of complete negation of all experiences. Go back to the original state. That is the objective of Shunyavadi, the Buddhists. And then you have the Mayavadis who are Nirvisesha, where they believe that since material phenomena is variegated and material phenomena is ultimately false, it may manifest itself temporarily, but ultimately it breaks down, then the whole concept of variegatedness, the whole concept of variety is a false premise. So they say that the spiritual sky, if it were to be variegated, then that's a part of Maya as well. If you have a conception of the Lord's pastimes, that is Maya, because the Lord is not supposed to have a form. The Lord is ultimately formless. This is this Nirvisesha personalities. Now, what I am trying to convey here is for bhaktas who are believers and who are on the path of Lord Chaitanya's mission and who are serving and who have heard so many times about the personal pastimes of the Lord in the spiritual sky, if we find it difficult to comprehend the fact that someone could cry at a mere utterance of the holy name, or if we find it difficult to comprehend that such bodily symptoms exist, or even that bodily symptoms which Mahaprabhu is talking about is in reality the highest expression of love, if we actually can not relate to it 100% because of our conditioning, what to say of personalities who deny the existence of the spiritual sky in terms of its variegatedness? What to say of personalities whose very goal of spiritual path is to ultimately end all variety and get into, shunyavad, practically get into a negation of all variety and get into primordial nature, right? The Buddhists practically chant mantras which are related to the Shakti who manages primordial nature, right? So they do that. Primordial nature is nature before it was manifest, before it was impregnated by the Lord with jivas. Clay, the original clay. Their own conception is that everybody is going to end up there. So anyway, the point we wanted to make was that this is not an easy verse for us to comprehend because it is talking about a very high level of sentiment. But one can understand that this is something which is very possible because one is in touch with Krishna. One, the moment they are calling upon Krishna's name in Bhava Bhakti, they're coming in touch with Krishna. Krishna is manifesting himself, and Krishna is completely taking charge, and Krishna and the devotee are interacting. The devotee practically is transporting himself or herself to the spiritual sky, and they are completely, merging, or rather merging into the eternal activity which they have to perform, and into their swarup, which is the original form which they were in the spiritual sky. So when such knowledge has been given, which is what the verse was in the previous week's session, right, where he is talking about the Swarup Gyan, I have understood I'm a servant of yours, don't throw me away, was verse 5. In this verse, Mahaprabhu is practically experiencing and talking about the external symptoms of bhava. The Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu talks about the internal nature of those who are bhava bhaktas. This is a very important aspect, because the external manifestation of crying and shivering and all that, it has practically been, it can be mimicked, and it has been mimicked, right? The Sahajiyas, they imitate, and they think that external manifestation of all these symptoms, by imitating all of that, is practically making them advanced and bringing them very close to Krishna. But our acharyas are more focused on the internal changes. What is the internal state and consciousness of a bhava bhakta? What are the symptoms of a bhava bhakta internally? Let's look at that, because that is very important for us, because our measuring rod is what is going on inside the heart. Every one of us is accountable for what's going on in our own hearts, right? So why shouldn't we completely have benchmarks that are related to internal consciousness? And we can monitor, and we can say that this is what our acharyas are talking about as being an internal state in the highest level. Do we have it? Okay, so that's what this is about. So let's look at the internal state and understand that. The first symptom, the sadhaka is marked by 9 different symptoms. There are 9 symptoms in Bhava Bhakti, which are internal. Okay, and the first symptom is he is anxious to utilize his time in Krishna's service and does not like to be idle. There is great emphasis on being able to manage the day. If we notice, it is not so much that we don't have time, but we will notice that our time slips away in just like that. And when you notice that our time is slipping away and we have no control over time, right, that particular fact in itself is a reflection of our consciousness. Higher consciousness means the person has a greater control over kala. Kala, or time, is a symptom of the material sky. It is not a part of the spiritual sky. In the spiritual sky, everything is present, it is eternal. But kala is a symptom of the material manifestation. So someone who is very advanced has the ability to control and manage their time very, very well. Okay? They would know exactly how to use their time. At any given time, they can be engaged. There would never be a situation where you would feel that they're wasting their time. They will always be constantly engaged. And how is one supposed to be engaged? They will be engaged in talking about the object of their love. Wherever they get an opportunity, they're going to be talking about Krishna. Wherever and whenever they get an opportunity, they're going to be absorbed in deeper levels of service. They're going to be chanting, they're going to be reading, so on and so forth. You see, this whole thing about expanding our activity and having the ability to multitask, having the ability to accomplish many things at the same time, so on and so forth, is a matter of consciousness and as we go higher. Because such a person would be able to compress the whole day to their liking. They would be able to effect and have control over material nature, where they will be able to modify the effect of material nature. Because the time factor in material nature is very complex. It has a tendency to overwhelm us. It has a tendency to overwhelm us to the point where we will have no control over where time goes. But as we grow higher in consciousness, we are able to manage our time. This was demonstrated by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who also had, the so-called mundane engagement of working in an establishment. So he used to be extraordinarily efficient in carrying out his work. He used to put, get rid of all the files, the cases, and so on, which used to accumulate as a magistrate, in perhaps a quarter or less of the time which everybody else used to take. If someone needed a whole day or 2 days or 3 days, he would complete it in a couple of hours. He would use the rest of the time in Krishna's service, right? That is what allowed him to sometimes chant 192 rounds every night. Sometimes when he didn't have, when he had work, he used to be writing, and he used to pace back and forth in his house in the night, preaching, so that he could kind of argue and counter-argue and build arguments so that he could eventually document all of that and write down. So sometimes it was 192 rounds, right? Other times it was preaching. So he ended up authoring 100 books, including poems and all kinds of things. He ended up, or rather, he was the pioneer for Krishna consciousness in recent times, where he unearthed Mayapur, re-established Lord Gauranga Mahaprabhu's pastimes. He was a successful, magistrate. 100 books. He had 11 kids. Talk about kids. He had 11 kids. Okay, and he also had dealings like everybody else does. Dealing with issues such as people coming and meeting him and wanting to seek his counsel. So he had a certain part of his day allocated for meeting with people, and this is a manifestation of someone of a very high level of consciousness who is able to effect his potency on material nature, as opposed to having material nature impose rules on him in terms of how time is going to be spent. So that has to be understood, that one who is advanced is going to have control over time, and they would employ that control in ensuring that time is spent in serving Krishna. That's the first symptom. So if we are hanging out, that's a reflection of our consciousness. What do you mean? What do we mean by that? We mean that if we are taking it easy, that's a reflection. Number two, second symptom, he is always reserved and perseverant. He's quite grave, because there is this objective in the previous verse we heard from Mahaprabhu. I have attained your servitude. I have attained my Swarup Gyan. I have attained so much. How will I not be grave after attaining such a position of wanting to constantly ensure that I'm able to serve in that position and to persevere? Perseverance is again something which will be noticed. It will become a marked feature of someone who is a Bhava Bhakta, of where they will persevere, and they would also be able to put in a lot of time and effort in being able to maintain their position. So what does it mean? It means that they're going to be quite reserved. They're going to be grave. They're going to be reserved about how they do things. He is always detached from all material attraction. It's a fact. The newer we are in Krishna consciousness, the more attracted and comfortable we become with the external surroundings. That's one way of checking to see how deeply situated we are, is to see how comfortable we are in material surroundings. Are you comfortable with your old haunts? Check it out. See if you're becoming very comfortable with, the old haunt. Are you becoming comfortable with the old association that we had? Are you comfortable with, spending time like those the people others did during those times? So this is exactly how we need to understand whether we are qualified or not qualified. The way we understand is whether we are in a situation where we are very comfortable with the aberration of the material world. So as we make advancement in Krishna consciousness, we lose taste. We lose taste for what we were, and we become something else. So advancement literally means that you graduate from lower base interests to higher levels of consciousness. So we become more and more refined in our ability to spend time and talk about and engage in activity. If we are still doing what we did 10 years back, then that's where we are. He does not long for any material respect in return for his service, needless to say. Because a person who doesn't even think, he is completely aware of not belonging to this planet, is not going to constantly do things for a return perspective. In other words, I will do something in return for something else. That service mood will not be there, where, okay, I'm going to be doing something because I need to have respect. Let me do something because, I can get respect, I can get honor, name, fame. That's gone. Why? Because there is absolutely no identification with this body. This is what we mentioned in verse 3. Kirtaniya Sadahari, the prerequisite is Trinadapi Sunichena, Taroriva Sahishnuna, right? The four qualities, Trinadapi Sunichena, Taroriva Sahishnuna, Amani, Manadena. Amani, Manadena. So the point is, you become prideless, devoid of false pride, and respect everyone. This is a natural condition of someone who has attained a higher level of consciousness because they don't identify with this body. The more we identify with this body, the more we demand and want, recognition, fame, and so on for whatever we do. So it's a clear case of what should not be happening. He is certain of Lord Krishna's mercy. Right? He is certain of Lord Krishna's mercy. This is actually a very important line. He is completely clear of Lord Krishna's mercy. What does this mean? It practically means that there is also a feeling of being disqualified, or rather lacking qualification on one side, but on the other hand, also completely being dependent and certain that even though I don't have any qualifications, Krishna is there and he will come and he will take care of me. Complete knowledge, or rather, complete faith in Krishna. Complete faith. Go back to the Vrajvasis, because this is the mindset of a Vrajvasi. This is the mindset of a Vrajvasi, where they are able to go under a mountain which a 7-year-old boy is lifting up with his little finger. They're able to walk under a mountain which a 7-year-old boy is lifting up with his little finger. That requires faith. That requires faith and certainty of how Krishna is going to reciprocate and so on and so forth. Even though there is a certain feeling of disqualification. Srila Rupa Goswami has written about this quite elaborately in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He is always very eager to serve the Lord faithfully. There's no need for an explanation. Always very eager to serve the Lord faithfully. So eagerness, laulyam, there's great greed for wanting to serve the Lord in different ways faithfully. He is very attached to the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. There is real ruchi. There's real ruchi, very attached to the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. He's very attached. What does it mean? This is a person who can chant 24/7. They can chant 24/7, become completely absorbed, and there would be no need for any external, taking care of the body, so on and so forth. He's always eager to describe the transcendental qualities of the Lord. Great eagerness into speaking and glorifying Krishna's names. He is to qualify, to describe the transcendental qualities of the Lord. Very eager. 9th quality, he is very pleased to live in a place where the Lord's pastimes are performed. So this is someone who has a lot of happiness in being able to be a part of the Dham. They want to live in the Dham. And they want to spend time in the Dham. That's where they want to live. So these are 9 different symptoms. And these are 9 internal symptoms and internal states of consciousness of someone who has attained Bhava Bhakti. Right? And this is very important for us, because this nobody will know externally. Perhaps they can have some idea, but nobody will know externally, and this is our job. Write this down as serious sadhakas and start monitoring if we are there. If you're not there, you're not there. No cheating, because this is our part. We have to do this. If you're not there, we're not there, which means that there's work to do. So that's how we will understand what the internal state of consciousness is of a higher level, and we'll start working towards it. We'll start working towards it. So this is the beginning of prema. This is the beginning of prema. Bhava is the beginning of prema. And this is the first step of where the devotee is able to experience the higher sentiments after attaining the Swarup. And the manifestation of this state externally is what Mahaprabhu is describing. He's talking about tears pouring incessantly. There have been many descriptions, many descriptions and accounts of Srila Prabhupada displaying these symptoms. Many accounts, okay, where he never restrained himself toward the end when he was leaving the world, or rather, when he was, when the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada was, I think, a very short period before that, he stopped controlling himself. Towards the end, we could see, there are some videos perhaps one could see where he sits and he sings Shri Radha Madhav, the song, Jai Radha Madhav. And when he's singing Jai Radha Madhav, you can immediately see, Srila Prabhupada's tears welling up in his eyes. Practically, people used to notice the change in complexion. His color used to change. These are external symptoms. But what we wanted to really go into today was the internal changes. The internal changes that are required, which can be monitored by us. Okay, am I looking for something beyond? Am I looking for something other than Krishna? How am I managing my time? How comfortable am I with my past surroundings? Am I comfortable plugging into activities which I used to do before coming into Krishna consciousness? Or am I finding it to be quite distasteful? Okay, these are all things that we have to monitor. And if we monitor, and then we are able to very clearly have an understanding of where the problems are, then we can start working towards fixing those problems. Okay, so that's the whole idea of being able to understand the internal symptoms, and also to understand what awaits us. What awaits us is what Mahaprabhu is describing, that there will be a point where we won't be able to function by the mere name of Krishna. One cannot function. This is what we mean by having a need to step down. Step down so that they can function with the reality of this world. Okay, we hear about it in Nectar of Instruction that the Uttam Adhikari has to step down. Stepping down practically is coming down so that you are able to function. Otherwise, if there are going to be high level of sentiments and emotions and the stages of the condensation of the loving emotions of bhava into prema, functioning normally becomes very challenging for the person. They cannot relate to this world easily. The senses will not function fully, properly, because there will be a disorientation. So it's not easy for them. So it's important for them to come down. And how do they come down? They put their entire intensity into preaching. They put their entire intensity into serving. And as a consequence, they are able to have a high level of contact with Krishna through their service, and are also able to make progress and assist others. So that's how it manifests itself. It manifests itself as someone at a higher level steps down and puts their entire energy into offering service in different ways. Okay, so we stop here. Today we are on verse 6, and that would give us 2 more classes for us to conclude the 8 sections. The next 2 sessions are on prema. Obviously, very lofty topic, but we will simply try and understand what that is so that we can understand the verse, okay, in a similar manner, so that we would be able to kind of calibrate and manage our own inner emotions and understand, where we are in relationship to such a lofty position of someone who is in Krishna Prema. Okay, I'm going to stop here and see if we have any questions. You mentioned in previous classes that we need to accept the environment and people around as Krishna's gift and act with the knowledge given by Krishna. I have a couple of questions on this. Sometimes I'm confused in certain situations if my reaction to a difficult situation is guided by knowledge from Krishna or based on my own imagination. Okay, hold on. Please guide on how to distinguish between the two. Okay, first step, let me read your other question, and then I can possibly combine the answers if I need to. Most of the times, I try to accept the bad situations in life as Krishna's arrangement to grow spiritually. But I keep thinking as to why this happened to me. How do we even stop asking the question why, in addition to accepting Krishna's arrangement? See, it's a practical thought process. The first question is, how do I know that the reaction itself is being guided by knowledge from Krishna, or it is based on my own imagination? Okay, the only way we would be able to calibrate our responses as being bona fide or not bona fide is for number one, for us to be able to see the impact of the situation on the aspects of Krishna consciousness. Have we really accepted it as Krishna's arrangement? If we have, then we should have the enhanced ability to chant, we should have the ability to read, we should have the ability to serve, associate all the things which are associated with Krishna consciousness. We should be more eager to do so after going through the so-called negative experience as far as material energy is concerned. Then we would know that such an arrangement has been accepted by us, and we have also received it in a manner which is appropriate, and we are also acting according to what Krishna wanted us to act. Okay? Fundamentally, we have to have faith in the fact that Krishna will not be against our Krishna consciousness. Okay? I'm not playing with words. It's a fact. There are many who feel that Krishna interferes with Krishna consciousness, especially during times of duress, which is not the case. So a good way to calibrate if a certain experience has been taken and has been adjusted to and has been received by us and accepted by us in a proper way, have we digested it? A good way to do so is to calibrate and understand whether we are our own Krishna consciousness and our ability for sadhana and our ability for service has increased or has become enhanced due to such a situation. So that's a good thing. If we don't see that and we are finding that the quality of chanting, our ability to do sadhana and everything is deteriorating, then that is a time for us to bring things back on the drawing board and to examine it to see if we have taken it up in the right sense. Because has a situation really become a block? In other words, are we merely suffering or are we enhancing our spiritual growth? That distinction has to be made. Okay? If we are merely suffering, then that's what it is. We have not fully accepted it as Krishna's arrangement. Okay? We're just accepting it and we're just suffering. We're not really been able to transform it into a higher level of spirituality. Or rather, we have not been able to access the higher growth through that experience. It's very important for us to be able to calibrate it and see it that way. That is also a good way to see if something is Krishna's arrangement or is it our own karmic reaction, which is very complex. If it is Krishna's arrangement, invariably, we will find that our bhakti and the circumstances to enhance our bhakti have actually happened. If our own karmic reactions are in play in a very intense way, then we would see that we have real obstacles in being able to move forward in Krishna consciousness at that point in time. So that's the other way to see it as well. Okay. So the reaction itself should result in a deeper level of practice. That is the bottom line. That is the way you will understand if it is you are reacting to it properly. Okay. We should be able to do better after that, not worse. The second question that you had was, I'm sorry, I mistook that one. The second question was, why is this? We keep thinking about it. See, that is a natural step. You see, it's a natural step, and when something goes wrong, until such time we are able to process the event in a manner which is appropriate, that event would remain as an event, an experience of suffering. No one really, constantly hinges upon things that are giving them a good feeling. They hinge upon things which are negative. So we are suffering. The more we identify with the event and with the karmic reactions, and we have not been able to process it as Krishna's mercy, the more we would want, question the need for it. Right? If something happens and we are not able to make sense of it, right, we suffer and we keep questioning as to why is this happening. However, if something happens and correspondingly we notice that our Krishna consciousness has grown, we notice that there's an opportunity which has come by for us to be able to do better. We also notice that, okay, this is Krishna's arrangement. At any given time, he's going to be presenting me with a situation for me to grow out of. Let me see how I can grow out of it. If that particular attitude keeps coming every time we look at a situation, then that attitude will allow us to grow. So it's more of a situation of wanting to grow out of it and be able to move forward. This is again going back to what I just read about the Baba Bhakta's view. What is the Baba Bhakta's view? He or she is completely confident of Krishna's mercy. We are not. That's the difference. He or she, who is at the higher level of consciousness, is completely confident of Krishna's mercy. Okay, this is called, this is a symptom which is a very high level devotee will always have, that immaterial of what the circumstances are, they would not be shaken by it. They would not be perturbed, and they would understand that this is Krishna's mercy. It is quite the opposite of what we feel. Okay, so that is the difference. The difference is of consciousness, Krishna's mercy. Because at any given time, the person is constantly experiencing Krishna. They are processing the negatives and the positives in the world, and they are taking on an understanding that this is Krishna's play. Okay, they're able to do it because they really have deep confidence that this is mercy. They have deep confidence that Krishna would never let me down. Krishna loves me. That confidence is what allows them to see through it. If you really want to learn more about this, one should spend time reading the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Please read the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam of Prahalad Maharaj, Prahalad Charita. Just read Prahalad Charita, where this young boy of 5 years old, he is able to transform all the negatives. He is able to transform one negative after the other and keeping his faith steadfast. Okay, that particular aspect is what we need to develop. That's a very good example of someone who is able to accept the environment, and they have the ability to act upon it with courage, which is chanting the holy names under all circumstances. And what did he not experience in the 7th canto? What did he not experience as a 5-year-old child? It's a very complex environment. That's a typical situation of Taro Riva Sahishnuna, someone who is completely tolerant like a tree. Very humble, very malleable, respecting. He was even respecting his demoniac spiritual master. He was respecting the demoniac students. He was respecting the demon who was his father in certain ways, according to his culture. And at the same time, he was able to chant Kirtane Sadahari. It's a fantastic canto. If this particular principle of being able to accept things, which is Trinadapi Sunichena, is demonstrated wonderfully by Prahalad Maharaj. Mahaprabhu, he used to spend a lot of time listening to Prahalad Charita and Dhruva Charita, both of these. He used to be very enthused because Prahalad Charita has so many beautiful lessons for us. We may never be put into circumstances which are as intense as Prahalad Maharaj. We never be. But there's a lot of cues in that particular canto in terms of behavioral modification that we will have to display, to show us what is possible. That canto shows us what is possible, right, in one sense. So that's the reason why it's very important for us to read the 7th canto, for us to understand this better, as to how to accept things. How is he able to do it? Because faith. Intense faith, deep faith. Dhruva, determination. Prahalad, faith. Intense faith. And that is the same symptom of a Bhava Bhakta, where they are completely confident that Krishna's mercy would be ever present. They would never ever feel that Krishna is not providing mercy. That's what I meant by saying that we should never ever come to a conclusion that Krishna is interfering with our Krishna consciousness. We are dealing with our karmic reactions. If our karmic reactions are not allowing us to make progress, understand that this is entirely our karmic reactions. We are dealing with it. We have to just beg for mercy from the holy name so that we can process those karmic reactions better. The more we are able to accept those karmic reactions and the situation as Krishna's gift and become grateful, the more we will be allowed to navigate ourselves out of it. It's a matter of being able to allow to navigate. Krishna gives the power. He will remove, he will show us the door out of that situation. Hope that answers your question. I think there were 3 questions. Yeah, 3 paragraphs. Any other question? I can possibly give 1 more minute, and after which we'll get done. And one more answer to this for your question, Lakshmi Mataji, is that I'm confused in certain situations. One more thing is we'll have to always see if our guidance of knowledge of how to deal with a situation can have a parallel to a shastric situation. Are we guided by Shastra? Are we guided by the precepts of a sadhu, by experience? If we can have some kind of a basis for our experiences to what is written in Shastra and what's been experienced by others, that again is a matter of great confidence that Krishna is guiding us. Okay, and this is not our own speculation and our imagination. This is in addition to observing if we are able to make progress in Krishna consciousness after such experiences. Okay, I don't see any more questions, so we'll stop here and then we will again meet on Thursday for the next session. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.